Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to TCOM 408 Online. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you find this short little video important and intriguing. In this video, I want to talk about some ethical guidelines surrounding media violence, a controversial issue. The topic of media violence. I would like to set forth a set of guidelines for an ethics of violent content. Now, these ideas are mine and they come from my values, my opinions, and my reflections. You don't have to accept any of these guidelines. In fact, what I encourage you to do is come up with your own set of guidelines regarding any sort of controversial media content. But let's check out this list of guidelines. Okay, first, is there adequate warning by the producer so that anyone in the audience can reject the content? In other words, is it rated? Is it labeled? Do you support the idea of an adequate warning for the viewer? To me, anyway, this is kind of the minimum ethical requirement to provide adequate warning so that the content reaches the intended audience. Whether you do this through ratings or viewer advisories, I think that this is a very, very important thing to do in terms of violent media content. Okay, a second guideline involves gratuitous violence. Is the violence depicted gratuitous or is it essential to the plot and the script? The older I get, the less I seem to enjoy gratuitous violence. I personally think it should be reduced or eliminated. Do you agree with this? No gratuitous excess violence? Would that be a good ethical guideline for you? How about this third question? Does the material depict violence as a desirable or inevitable consequence, or as a solution to a problem? Do you have an opinion on this guideline? No depictions of violence as desirable or as the solution to problems. Here's a fourth guideline, a fourth question to ask. Is there just punishment for unwarranted acts of violence? Or are unwarranted acts of violence rewarded? Is there clear punishment or reward? Do you agree with this, that there should be punishment for all unwarranted acts of violence? In other words, we shouldn't show people who do violence getting rewarded or off the hook. These are deep questions. Now, you probably agree with the guidelines about the warning labels are necessary. Beyond that, I would suspect some of you are rejecting some of these guidelines as unnecessary and an interference with artistic freedom. A fifth guideline. Are the heroes and villains clearly delineated? I'm much more comfortable personally when they are, although I know there's a phenomenon called the anti-hero. Okay, complex characters that have both good and bad traits that are kind of ambiguous, but I still prefer clear heroes and villains. What about you? Do you think that the heroes and villains should be clearly delineated? Or is this an infringement on artistic freedom? Number 6, how graphic and explicit are the scenes, especially the scenes involving pain, suffering, injuries, death, torture? Should we show hyper graphic and explicit scenes? What's your ethical standard? Do you agree there should be no excessive hyper-graphic scenes inside of video content, entertainment video content? How about the violence shown? Is it depicted as erotic? Is it sexual in nature? And is the sexual assault portrayed as desired or welcomed by the victims? This kind of violence is especially offensive to my ethical standards. What about yours? Would you eliminate this kind of erotic violence from any video product that you were in charge of? How about this notion? I bet most of you agree with this. No animal cruelty. Ask, is there any unwarranted cruelty to animals? And I hope for sure that you support this one, that this is universal. There should be no unwarranted cruelty to animals depicted in any kind of movie or video. A final question. Now, this is a big thought question and a high standard, but maybe an important guideline. Is there some higher public purpose to be served by the use of violence in the story? Can we justify it in terms of some higher public purpose? Do you think it's necessary to go this far? Is it necessary that the violence serve a higher public purpose? That will be up to you to decide. Anyway, that's some of the ideas from my own personal set of guidelines regarding media violence. Now, if you agreed with any of these principles, and you probably did with the idea of ratings and no animal cruelty, but if you agreed with any of those guidelines, you have started to develop your own code or set of ethics in terms of media violence. So how about that? I want you to continue to think about issues like violence and sex or any other ethical or controversial issue, and what kind of personal guidelines would you develop for the treatment of this kind of content. All right, that's all I've got for this little video on violence. Please take care of yourselves and stay safe. So long for now.